I've had a lot of experience with that in this sense that out of the 5,000 people I brought in, 1,000 of them should never have been self-employed. And in this country, I think studies show 2/3 of us want to be self-employed, but probably about half of the people that want to be self-employed shouldn't be. They don't have the drive. They don't have the risk tolerance. They don't have the get up and go to do it. They don't understand this simple concept. The 10 most important two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. So they don't. It's never been up to them. They've always had a safety net.
And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, the Mentoring podcast. Today, I'm so super excited today to have John Hewitt with us. He is the founder of Jackson Hewitt, a company in which in 1997, he sold for almost $500 million. Now, to put that into perspective, in today's money, that's like selling a business for $1 billion. So we're talking about a person who knows how to build and scale businesses. After that, he founded a very household name, Liberty Tax, got out of that business, and now he started Loyalty Brands. Loyalty Brands, he's blown up with multiple franchises in this organization. We're talking ATAX, we're talking Ledgers, we're talking Loyalty Business Brokers, we're talking Zooming and Grooming, we're talking Salty Dogs, we're talking CR3 and Inspection Boys. We've got so many things that he's got started. How does this person just keep on going? And today we're going to find out. He's an absolute mentor to me personally. I've got to know him personally by visiting him down in Virginia Beach multiple times, meeting all the people that have really, he's inspired not only to be successful, to also be loyal. These are people who've been working with him for 20 plus years. And then you look at that and you couple that together with all the new people who are joining his organization. John, how do you keep up with this energy?
You know, God didn't put us on earth just to sit and not do anything. We're required. Those too much is given, much is expected. And I've been blessed beyond belief, and it's time to give back.
Now, you've been blessed with so much success in being able to, I remember looking at the history of when you're building all the different franchises of, setting up over 12 years, every single day, bringing in a new franchise location. It's unbelievable, staggering numbers. I think it was like 5,000 or 6,000 franchises, I think under creation. That's just unbelievable. And you look at all of that success, but then you couple that with all of the challenges. With success comes just bigger problems sometimes. And you've been able to really, unfortunately, become part of those challenges and then overcome them. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you've gone through that's really been character building, I guess is probably the easiest way to find, and that got you to where again, you are today.
You know, I thought about it today, and I became a CEO in August of 1982 for the first time. So that's 42 years, and that's 15,000 days. There hasn't been a day that's gone by that I haven't had to face some adversity or some new problem or some challenge. And so and on average, it's 2, 3, 5 things, important things a day. So I've faced 30, 40, 50,000 challenges. And the difference between winners and losers is losers get knocked down and the winners just get up and keep going each and every time. But the biggest challenge is that there's no school in the world, certainly in the United States, to teach people to be a CEO. And so I call it the school of hard knocks. I'm a successful graduate of the school of hard knocks.
When we sat at dinner, that was one of the things that I thought was really inspirational, is when it was talking about some of the mistakes that I had made this summer. And I said, and I quote myself, is I don't want to make a couple more mistakes. And then you clarified and you said, no, you need to just embrace making mistakes. Now, I want to couple that with another thing that I listened to where you were talking a little bit about, don't have that loser's mentality. And sometimes people who keep on losing, they just embrace losing. So how do you get from, I don't want to keep on making mistakes, but I also don't want to embrace a loser mentality?
You have to understand that the biggest mistake is to do nothing, and to take no risk and just sit and do nothing. That's the biggest mistake you can make. I recently saw a clip from the owner of the Savannah Bananas, a great marketing machine. And if you haven't heard of it, Google it,
Yep.
Savannah Bananas. And he said everything we tried went wrong. And we made mistakes. And he said, if you're not making mistakes, you're not improving, you're not changing, you're not growing.
Now, wasn't his biggest mistake also his biggest successes? I think what I recall.
Well, one of the ones he said in making mistakes, he said they rolled out a an attempt to give free hot dogs and hamburgers and soda with the price of the admission. And the first night they tried it, they were so horrible at it. They had a 2 hour wait during a baseball game to get your food. And so now it's a machine. They got it. I went and saw it. It's like a machine. And he even learned to small things like you give the soda first, so they don't have as much room to put hamburgers and hot dogs in their hands, so they take less food. So I mean, he said he's done everything wrong, and he said you have to understand that things are going to go wrong. They always go wrong, and that's how you improve.
One of the things that I think is a personal mantra is massive imperfect action beats perfect planning. Is that something that you would agree with? Is that something that you could build upon or pivot?
That's pretty profound and well said. So, yeah, I think again, it's right up what I believe that if you're going to improve, you have to change, and you can't change without making mistakes. And I allow my people to make mistakes. The only mistakes I don't allow them to make are mistakes that could kill the company. But if
Mhm.
but if they're not growing, if then we're not learning.
I just interviewed the president of Keller Williams Worldwide on my past podcast session, and he was talking about Gary Keller, who owns and founded Keller Williams. And one thing that you find in really good leadership is a really strong theme of being able to artfully delegate and still maintain control and culture and direction. And that's something that I think you've done an extremely good job of in the way that you've built the different businesses, is having that artful way of doing delegation and still retaining control. So how do you balance both those two of being, some people call it the control freak around the numbers and the success, but also still having that latitude to give people the ability to be successful in their own volition?
Delegation it could be the biggest disease in American management. It's certainly one of the top two or three. Lack of ability to delegate, and delegation comes. The most important part of delegation is follow up and making sure that you inspect your expectations. So it's easy to give instructions, and so what I do is I'm always going to check up later, but I don't wait until the project is near completion. So we set up steps all along the way. So, for example, we're going to have a new program to call 100 customers. Well, I don't wait until I get to 100. After 5 or 10, I say, come back and report the results. So you delegate and you inspect along the way. You set early attempts to measure, not wait until the end to measure.
So very similar to a car, like I had a Tesla. It's now been crashed up, but very similar to a car that has auto driving capabilities. You don't want it looking and checking the environment every hour or two or every hour or three. You'll be in the ditch, but you want to be checking at a frequency that gives you the input so that you can make key decisions at the time in which it's going to have the most impact. And what you're saying is that is artful delegation.
Yeah, and for example, we did a television spot one year, and I was not enthralled with the new television spot. And in the tax season, it's a very short window of 3 or 4 weeks of marketing early. And I told my marketing director, well, I don't like this one, so we're going to go on. We went on the Oprah Winfrey show, same time, 2 days. On the first day, on Tuesday, we did her new version with an 800 number, and then on the second day we did the old version with an 800 number, and we got one call from her new version, and it was wrong number, and we got 18 calls the next day from the old version, and so we scrapped it first day. We
Yep.
didn't wait until the end of the 3-week period, 3-week $1 million buy to test whether it was working.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from leaders about the idea around delegation, and where where you talk about delegation as a disease, and some people think like delegation is just passing it off to somebody else, whereas what you're saying is when you pass it off, you have that system and that model to be able to make sure that the model is holding that delegation accountable. And so when we look at systemic success, that's something that I think you really hone in on for people to be able to be successful in building a sustainable business.
Yeah, as you pointed out, I brought in 5,000 franchisees and had over 10,000 locations. And you're going to have events that are going to happen often. And I call it tip the iceberg, that you need to find things that you see, start seeing little symptoms of they're happening 2 times, 4 times, 6 times. And now you can't face them each individually. You have to attack them in advance. You have to be proactive. So many businesses, so many managers are reactive. You have to be proactive and figure out systems of things that are going to regularly occur.
Yeah, the regular occur is a thing that's interesting, because I think a lot of times when people are building systems, they start to build systems around the infrequent problems rather than the frequent problems. And then they start focusing on the things that they shouldn't rather than the things that they should. How do you keep it so that your company is focusing on those number one key performance indicators?
An example of that I can't of on the one-off situations. I hate restaurants where I go and I have a table for 6 and 2 of us show up and they say, we can't seat you until everyone's here. And I don't know why that is. Something must have happened one time, sometime in someone's life that the restaurant's not full, it's empty. And we can't seat you yet because until everyone's here. And I have people coming from all over, 20 minutes away, an hour away, and it's going to take, someone's going to be invariably late. It's going to destroy my meeting, my dinner, but if I wait until everyone's there. So I just hate that rule. And it has to be an infrequent occurrence. I can't even imagine why they have that rule. But they set up rules to handle unimportant things that really don't matter. And one of my goals is that principles supersede policies. And so if I have a policy that if I have that silly policy that you can't be seated until everyone's there, then I'm going to allow my people to make an exception.
Yep. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Principles senior to the mechanics, principles senior to the policies. Because if you're so honed in on the mechanics side of things, there's so many opportunities for improvement that could be missed out because you're just dialed into the checkbox kind of mentality rather than thinking outside of the box. And I think that's actually something you've talked about quite a bit around culture, around thinking outside of the box. And so one of the things when you look at building that culture of people who are compliant where they need to be, but creative where it makes sense, how do you build that in a culture in a company?
The only way I found to build that is we hire for attitude. We don't hire for skills. Tom Watson, senior founder, one of the founders of IBM, said, give me 100 great engineers or give me 100 great people with a great attitude, and I'll take the people with great attitude. You can teach engineering, you can't teach attitude. So I've never been able to take someone with a bad attitude and train them to put customers first and to try to exceed customers' expectations. So number one, it starts with hiring the right people. And then you're never going to be 100% right. So an important part of that is you get rid of people that don't fit into that culture.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things you talked about in one of your webinars that you run on the loyalty brands, where I think it was you and Bob who were talking, is if I stand corrected, we're talking about how to attract A players and really build that into the DNA of your recruiting and your retention package. And so flush out a little bit about that, because I think that's important for buy-in and that's important for culture, is to really, really attract those great people.
Yeah, the ideal employee, the ideal person to work with is someone who acts like an owner. And in my career, in all the businesses I've looked at, less than 3% of people act like owners. So you try to determine up front if you have someone that's going to act like an owner, that's going to exceed expectations and look at things in a positive way. And you can't just ask them, "Are you positive?" when you're doing an interview. So the ideal thing to do is, if you can do, like in the tax business, we have a tax school that we spend 10 weeks with people and train them in taxes. So we know their attitude after the 10 weeks. And in an interview, even as experienced as I am in 55 years of management and being a CEO, I'm only right 55, 60% of the time. But if you can give someone a temporary assignment, like a tax school or a training session, or hey, I'll hire you for a month and then see if this works out, or 6 months, that's ideal, because you're never going to be 100%. People are going to fool you. The best time anyone is in their life is when they're being interviewed for a job. They're just, every human being says they're wonderful.
Yeah, first date or interview is probably the best time they'll ever show up, and then everything after there is a change. And the idea of saying, "Don't tell me, show me," is a great model for success. Now, there's something you hit earlier on about having that entrepreneurial mindset. In one of the stats that you quoted earlier, and I want you to flush this one out, is around the idea of how many people think they should start a business versus how many people should start a business.
I've had a lot of experience with that, in this sense that out of the 5,000 people I brought in, 1,000 of them should never have been self-employed. And in this country, I think studies show 2/3 of us want to be self-employed, but probably about half of the people that want to be self-employed shouldn't be. They don't have the drive. They don't have the risk tolerance. They don't have the get up and go to do it. They don't understand this simple concept: the 10 most important 2-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. So they don't. It's never been up to them. They've always had a safety net. They've always had an employer.
Yeah, I think the idea of extreme ownership, I think, becomes one of those things that is important for anybody in being self-employed. And first thing to look for is the idea, when somebody says they have a problem, the first thing to do is point at the 5 people around them and say it's because of them, rather than taking ownership. How do you put that into the culture of ownership of the actual elements that are happening in the business, in the market, in the industry? Because a lot of people will point at the industry's down, that's why my numbers are down. Well, that shouldn't be the case. And how do you implement that in practice in the business?
It's incredibly important to start with setting goals. And my job in leadership, in servant leadership, is we set the goal, we set your budget, and then I'm here to help you. And so I'm your servant after that. I'm going to help you make your goal. But communication is vital in that budget. I mean, for example, if you're in charge of franchise development and you're supposed to bring in 10 new franchises a month, for each quarter, that's 30 every quarter. You don't wait until the end of the quarter and come to me and say, "Oh, John, we're only going to do 12 this quarter instead of 30. You tell me in advance, you know in advance that you're not going to meet your number. And then I have to decide whether to give you more resources, more training, or to adjust the budget because the budget might need to be adjusted because of the economy or some other exterior problem. But your job is to communicate effectively. But my job is to communicate and make sure that we both understand the goals that in advance.
Yeah, and when you look at those goals and you're setting those with the people that you're working with, I know the one thing that you really promote, especially when you talk about your 12 principles for success, you Brent mentioned these briefly, I think 10 or so in your book, I Compete, and then you flesh them out further in your webinars. 2 of them are listening to employees and listening to customers. And so when you incorporate that into building an accurate vision for your business, how much of when you're building your vision is outside of listening to the people of the customers and listening to what they're saying today, and how much is trying to predict where they're going tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm fanatically committed to win. Therefore, I'm fanatically committed to having the best system. And therefore, to have the best system, it has to be improving. And the only way to improve easily is to listen to your customer. And then the easiest way to listen to your customers is listen to your employees. And so I think if I went into any company and gathered all the employees together and told me how should this company improve, whenever I've done that a couple of times to mentor others and help them, and they have great ideas. They know how to improve the company better than the founder, the CEO, the decision maker who knows big picture. They know, they have the pulse of today's customers, which is ever changing.
So when you have 5,000 pulses and you're taking that as an input, how do you reconcile what's a true pulse and what's a ghost pulse?
Yeah, the to be clear, we're not 5,000 is over 55 years. So I never had more than 2,000 at a time. But
Okay.
what we do is we go to the franchise community and said, give us. We divided it into 8 groups in the country and said, elect your representative, and this is we're going to sit down with these 8 people, and they're going to represent you, telling us as the corporate system maker, franchisor, they're going to tell us how to improve. And so we would have quarterly meetings and very important yearly meeting, but we would have quarter follow-up meetings on doing what they say. So one thing might be as simple as at the end of each tax return, we give them a tax return, and there's a letter on the top of it. Now, I don't really care what the letter says. The franchisees know what they need the letter to say. And they might say simply, well, 25% of our customers are Hispanic. We need a letter in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we'll develop that. So, or 10% are in my area, 10% are Vietnamese. I need a Vietnamese version. So just listening to the needs of each franchise that are represented, you can't listen to 2,000 people at a time.
Yeah. 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 You're sort of compartmentalizing into those different categories, and out of those categories, you're pulling out best of breed ideas and then using those as the direction for the next quarter, month, year, whatever it is, to be able to push that out. Now, when you're looking at that culture of just continuous improvement, and how do you keep people in that mindset that are applying that on a very routine basis?
It's so hard. That's one of the hardest things to do. Every human being I met of any quality says, "Oh yeah, I want to improve," but 99% of them say, "Just don't ask me to change." And so it's incredibly difficult to get people to move. I mean, even the best people tend to eventually get complacent. And so what you have to do is you have to continually drive that as a leader. You have to fanatically improve, and you have to hold them accountable. And when a franchisee says, we're going to, and we agree with the franchisees, they're going to need this next year. And your people saying, well, that's almost impossible, and blah, blah, blah. You have to we need to figure a way to do that. And so constantly along the way, when you grow from one office to 10,000 offices, you're going to need to replace people because they're not going to be able to stand up to that challenge of improvement. Most people are only willing to improve so much, or only capable of improving so much. So it involves a change of personnel. People get passed over, and sometimes they leave because they're incapable of that continuous improvement.
Well, when we look at the continuous improvement that you've done for going from a small business to a business, again, in today's terms, sold for $1 billion, that's a lot of changes that a person has to go to become the person that is expected to run that kind of an organization. And, one of the things that I believe is that as you go through changes, the things that got you today are going to be very different that are required in you to get you to where you go to tomorrow. So that metamorphosis has to happen. And that's definitely happened within you. And what are some of the biggest things that you've changed within you from that solopreneur style to that small business owner to that entrepreneur owning a monolithic style organization?
It's it's an education. It's an education as a CEO and as a person. And so, for example, one of the key educating part is when I was younger, we said customers number one, customers number one, customers number one. And then along came people like Herb Kelleher from Southwest Airlines, who wrote the book Nuts. I'm a constant student, constant reader, and of every biography of an entrepreneur that I can find. And Herb Kelleher in his book said, no, no, no. If you want your customers to treat as number one, you need to treat your employees as number one.
Absolutely.
So I pivoted. And I said to myself, well, I've been doing that, but I didn't realize why. So I started out 30, 40 years ago with a mission statement, customers for life, and then changed it to focus on employees. And today I believe that the success of my companies is happy, successful employees, happy, successful franchisees.
Yeah, and I think it was, and then the other thing that you pivoted on, I remember this was one of your pivots you talked about, was changing lives and then changing that to improving lives as part of the motto as well.
Yeah, that you always have to listen. And so our mission statement, which I love today, was originally having fun, changing lives. And then one of the employees said, or one of the franchisees said to us, no, you can change someone's life for the negative. And that was an aha moment. You can, right? And so you can make it real negative. And so we changed our mission statement, having fun, improving lives. And so yeah, you always have to understand that if you're not changing, then you can't be improving. And if you're not improving, your competitor's gaining on you.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing that I look in the one there's consistencies that I think happen within you, and then there's things that's changing within you. And when you look at the people who've known you for 20 years, 25 years, who've worked with you for that long, there's obviously things that they're drawn to. And one of the things I think the biggest thing is focusing on integrity. And that's something that I think is one of those pillars that you really promote. And how does that demonstrate in your relationship with customers, employees, franchisees, vendors? How does your integrity show up?
Well, this is a very simple statement that carries immense weight that people don't think about. That success is just doing what you say you're going to do. That sounds so simple, but out of all the human beings I know, 98% of them are incapable of that. I'm an old handshake guy. If I and I am so passionate about commitment to the future. Honesty is about the past and telling the truth about what's the past. Integrity is if I say I'm going to do this for you, then I am passionately, just vehemently going to pull out all the plugs to do what I say I'm going to do. I'm an old fashioned handshake kind of guy.
I love that idea of breaking out those two words into the tenses of time, where honesty is a reflection on the past and integrity is a commitment to the future. And I think that's a beautiful way of looking. I've never actually thought about it that way before. And I think that is such a great way to interpret how you reconcile with the information that we receive, both past and future.
I love it. I learned that when the CEO took over for me when I sold Jackson Hewitt. He was an incredible salesperson, incredible, and I learned how he did it. He just painted this picture of the future that he had no intention of ever getting to, and and I realized that the best salespeople, the crooks, I mean, they're mostly crooks, right? When they have Ponzi schemes and all this, they paint this beautiful future that they have not the slightest intention of honoring. Sort of like a politician. I've never seen a politician that did what he said he was going to do.
There was one politician in Ontario that actually tried to do what he said he was going to do. He wrote this thing called the Red Book, and without being, politically focused, he actually wrote exactly what I'm going to do. He got voted in, and they started implementing exactly what he was going to do, and then he got booted out because he tried to do exactly what he wanted to do, and he was vilified for it. And it was very interesting to see that. So one of the things that when you look at the application of integrity into a business, like there's things that are hard work, and holding yourself true to that integrity is actually hard work. One of the things that I've sort of hold as a mantra is that happiness is something that's fleeting. Fulfillment comes out of doing hard things. And I think when we challenge ourselves on a consistent basis, we get us a long-term joy that comes out of it. That's not just like I just ate an ice cream cone, I feel good, but maybe I'm going to suffer for it a little bit later. And so when you're trying to create that culture of hard work, and yet also as you talk about doing things joyfully, and how do you combine those two as a culture in a business?
I think that everything worthwhile requires hard work. And whether it's being a great athlete, I mean, you're Canadian, so being a Wayne Gretzky, right? Or
Mhm.
meet a Michael Jordan. I mean, people don't understand how much hard work they put in.
Mhm.
There's the 10,000 hour rule that you can't be great at anything if you haven't spent 10,000 hours in it. And so the gratification is meeting goals and exceeding expectations of customers and people around you. But the it only comes from hard work, and that's the only thing that will get you to great heights.
Heroes don't come from sitting on the couch eating Cheetos. And we don't, I know there's the one movie or episode of Seinfeld where I think George talks about making a show about nothing, but most people want to watch a show that has a hero story. They go through some amount of adversity and then they come out on the top of whatever they've been trying to solve. And a lot of that is number one is looking straight at the problem and then solving that problem head on. The second thing is the perseverance to be able to go through maybe the second or third or fourth. And I mean, I know in the business that you've gone through, you've had, those issues in 1995 where there was major issues in the IRS that caused that Black Friday, I think is what it was called. And then you've had other things, which is litigious issues with, I think it was some bank that you had that had some problems. That perseverance is really the thing that kind of it's the embracement of embracing hard work, but having that perseverance to know that you're going to do the next thing. And we all see that people love the word discipline, but the application of discipline needs to be supported by perseverance. And how do people keep feeding that ability to be able to be successful, that willpower to persevere over the obstacle that they're going against?
It's a simple difference between winning and losing. The winners, they get up every we all get knocked down. I've I've watched the whole world, including very successful people like I mentioned, a Wayne Gretzky or a Michael Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan's father got shot and killed in the middle of his career, and he changed his life and went and played baseball for a while. Or he was horrific. He wasn't any better than I would have been. And so he's making $18,000 being overpaid at baseball. It goes back to making $10 million a year at basketball, where it was his true calling. So yeah, we all get knocked down, and it's the number one key to success is getting up and keeping going.
Well, I think that's where you really, I mean, your book is called I Compete. So, I mean, we clearly know where you stand on the idea of having a competitive mindset. And would you say that that's one of those mindsets that really helps you with that perseverance? Is that burning desire to be successful and to win?
Yeah, I saw Dennis Rodman being interviewed, and I'm not a fan of Dennis Rodman. He's a maniac, and he fought with not only the opposing teams as a basketball player, he fought with his own teammates. And I saw him being interviewed, and they said, "How did you get along with Michael Jordan? I mean, you guys, you fight with your own teammates." And he said, "Because Michael and I are the same in one way. When we get on that court and we cross over onto the court, we give it 200%. We would rather die than lose." And so that's how I am. And people often, even though with me it's God, family, business, people look at me in business and say that you're just 100% business. Well, when I'm on the court, I'm 100% business. But in my life, it's God, family, business.
Yeah. That's why I love, I'm a big UFC fan, and I love fighting as a purity of expression, because you cannot go into a fighting environment like in the UFC without having that competitive mindset and that burning desire to, number one, be able to walk out in all pieces, but even two, even if you walk out broken and beaten, you've given everything. They have a term called going out on your shield, and being able to say, no, you've left everything in the ring, there's nothing held back, you've given it your all, and the outcome is the outcome that happens. And I think it was Kobe Bryant who actually talked about that. Is like, he talks about the idea that there's certain people who are there, they have the mindset to win, and then there's the other people who have the mindset to not lose, and that goes to those two different mindsets that we talked about. And I think what you're saying is exactly what Kobe talks about, is that he goes into the preparation so that the outcome then happens what he's looking for.
Exactly. It's not winning isn't everything. It's the only thing.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
I have to
Now,
run to my next meeting.
yeah, no, and one of the things that I wanted to do, first of all, John, is thank you very much for being on the podcast. And this, guys, this is the money, this is the mindset, this is the mentoring podcast. To catch up with everything that John's talked about and really dive into his work, go to Loyalty Brands, check out his Thursday webinar that he releases, check out his book. He's got a free copy of his book, I Compete. I highly suggest you get it. John, as I said, has been a mentor to me in everything that he talks about, and truly a blessing to have you on the show today, John.
It's my pleasure, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And guys, Money Mindset Mentoring, we'll see you on the next one.
Have a great day.
Thank you.